Hi everyone, welcome to Watch It, Play It Table Talk. My name is Rodney Smith. In this weekly segment, I propose a gaming-related topic, share my initial thoughts on it, and then invite your responses through the comments and your own videos that I'll compile into next week's Table Talk Back episode. And this way we can all participate in the conversation. But let me get things started. When I first moved to Prince Edward Island, I didn't know anybody, really. There was no local game store. I didn't know who the gamers were. And it wasn't until I met Pep, who, if you've watched this show, you might have seen show up occasionally. And through him, I met other people. We formed a game group that now has attendees that's ranged from 2 to 20 people. And usually it's somewhere in between there. And where it gets interesting is when you have a game group and you're breaking up into little subgroups to play the different games that you want to play. And this is where you run into some interesting social dynamics and challenges. If you have a smaller game group, maybe 2 to 5 players, then I think it's pretty straightforward. Everyone comes and knows that they're going to be playing all the games that get played that day together with the same people, unless you have a couple 2-player games. It's likewise, if you have a larger group, maybe 15 or more players, then I think, again, people kind of come expecting, knowing, all right, we're not going to be playing all of these games together in one big group. We're going to have to split off into smaller groups to play. Personally, I think 4 players is ideal for most games that you're going to play. 3 players sometimes creates a situation where 2 players have to gang up on one, and that isn't always fun. And if you have more than 4 players, oftentimes games and their length starts to stretch out to an unwieldy amount. So I find 4 keeps things nice and balanced, opens you up to a lot of options for different games to play, and keeps the game time to a reasonable amount. Now that's just me personally. The interesting thing though is when you get a game group of maybe 6 to 8 people who show up, because then it gets a little trickier when you're trying to break things down. This can also happen when you have a larger game group and everyone's found their little pockets of 4 and 5 people, and then you have sort of 6 or 7 people left over. What do you do then? Now that's not to say there aren't 6-player games. Of course there are. But there's not as many 6-player games, and sometimes you just don't want to play a game with that many players. So have you ever experienced that situation where you're just kind of awkwardly standing around trying to figure out how are we going to break into a smaller group? I've got this 4-player game I want to play, but if we choose to do that, well, you see, I think it comes down to sometimes less about the games and even the people, but just social graces. Because like, okay, I have a 4-player game. I can get 3 of you to join me, but then that means we're leaving 2 other people who either have to volunteer to separate themselves from the larger group or have to want to play just a 2-player game. And sometimes, even if there might be a couple people who'd be comfortable with that, you don't necessarily want to force them into that situation where you feel like you're taking them out of the larger group social experience by having them play a smaller 2-player game. You may have a game that you want to play, but now that you're down to a smaller group of people, you might realize, okay, this game is not going to be a good fit for this individual. Maybe they wouldn't like it, or you think it just wouldn't be their style. But they're not going to volunteer to sit out and not play, and you don't want to purposefully exclude them either. So all of these little things create challenges. And I should say I have a game group, and some of them may be watching this video. I wouldn't want any of them to get the impression that I'm talking about any of them. No particular person is a problem here any more than I would be a problem in this situation. It's more about just, again, navigating the social norms and trying to figure out how do we make this fun for everyone and make it work. Now, I said earlier that 4 people is an ideal number to play a game, but 4 people would be a pretty small game group, and it could get kind of stale because you might enjoy playing a certain game with a certain group of 4 people, but then another game would fall flat with that group. So having a larger game group and lots of different people to play with really provides you with that opportunity for variety, and that's a good thing. Now, as of late, I've been coming to game group with a game that I want to play. Maybe it's for 4 players, and I'll just announce, okay, I've got this game here. I need 3 more players. Who wants to play with me? And what I'm trying to do there is not necessarily force people into a game as much as I'm trying to create some positive inertia so that people just have to make a simple choice. Do I want to play this or not want to play this? I think that's better than sometimes what happens, you stand around with your hands in your pockets, not really sure, well, I don't know, what do you want to play? I don't know, what do you want to play? You know, so it at least gives a decision. Of course, the downside is people may not be ready to commit to playing a particular game when they don't know what the other options are, so that doesn't always solve it either. And maybe people will decide, no, I don't want to play this, and then I'm left standing there going like, oh, I guess no one wants to play this. Bummer, right? So I don't know, have you experienced this before? Have you sort of been in this awkward or strange situation? Has your group found a way to handle it or deal with it? I'd just like to hear from you, your strategies, your ideas, or even just your affirmations. Yes, this is a problem. It's the nature of being a human and having to make choices. Whatever it is, let me know in the comments below. If you'd like, record a 2-minute video and send me the link to that. I'll compile all this together into next week's Table Talk Back episode. And until then, thanks for watching.